everyone, and welcome to 92Y. Thank you for being here. My name's Kate Sheridan, and I work here at the 92nd Street Y on the Giving Tuesday team. Before we kick off the first panel, I just wanted to give a few housekeeping items. We're all at round tables, but we encourage you to get up, move around, sit next to someone new. We'll be doing a lot of brainstorming, and it's always great to hear some new perspectives, so we encourage you to talk to some new people. Also, we're live streaming this event, and we have viewers, as Henry said, tuning in from around the world. If you're watching the live stream, hello, welcome. And we also want you to participate as much as possible. So please tweet at GivingTues, or you can comment on our Facebook page, and we'll be checking in throughout the afternoon. So we'll definitely read your comments and questions from the stage. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce our first panel, which is looking at some data and new trends that we're expecting for 2015. Our panelists are Rachel Hutchisson from Blackbaud, Victoria Vrana from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and Sarah Koch from the Case Foundation. Please join me in welcoming them to the stage.
As we get up on this chair. Hey everybody, it's great to be here in New York. It's kind of a really big week for philanthropy. If you all kind of checked the news yesterday, Giving USA came out with its latest data, and Blackbaud is really pleased to be a member of the Giving Institute, which is the group that produces the Giving USA data every year, kind of shares it with the public almost as a public service project, and the news was really good. Giving was up to $358 billion. It was up 7.1%, which is phenomenal. It's really a moment to start feeling like, gosh, things are not just getting better, but things are good. So that was a really exciting kind of positive boost for anybody who cares about philanthropy. So today we're here to talk about Giving Tuesday, and to kick this off, really giving you some data. And I'm joined by Victoria Vrana from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Sarah Koch from the Case Foundation. And what we're going to do is I'm going to start and just give you a little bit of information about the data that Blackbaud has captured about the movement over the last couple of years. And then Victoria's going to share with us some really interesting data on research they've done around social media. Then we're going to get into a discussion about what that data means, put it in context, and how to make it helpful for you. So in your bags, you all got this little green report, which was a report that Blackbaud issued today. And one of the roles, I should say one of them, because we also use Giving Tuesday to help engage and motivate our employees. We put their faces on the NASDAQ last year, doing unselfies, lots of fun stuff. But one of the things that we've done from the beginning is tried to use our data and the fact that we process about 26 million, it was 26 million on the day, but we process a lot of money every year, philanthropic giving. So let's look at the day, starting the year before Giving Tuesday, and then each Giving Tuesday, and looking at that data set to see how much is giving going up on the day, online giving as a proxy for how this movement is growing. And the good news is there's a lot of really positive trends. So what this report does is it goes back and it looks at all those 3 years of data, and it layers in some other things like organizational size and other kinds of pieces that we think make it more helpful to you. So the big takeaways is that there has been double-digit year-over-year growth in online giving based on this data set since the beginning of Giving Tuesday. So it was 53% the first year, the second year Giving Tuesday, online giving went up 90%, and then the third year 36%. The last year that was based on a data set of $26.1 million. So there's a whole lot that's going on. The second thing is that the number of transactions is going up. So what that means is a whole lot more individual gifts are into the mix. The third is the average gift amount is increasing, and this is really important because there are a lot of people who think that online giving means like $15, $25, and the first year the average gift amount was $100, and it's now up to $134 to $168 depending on the size of your organization. That's a substantial gift, so that's important. And the final thing I'll touch on before I turn it to Victoria is something that Henry mentioned. So last year when we were looking at this data that came in, 17% of the gifts that were made online were a mobile form was viewed, a mobile donation form. So instead of going to a website with a computer, you go, you have your laptop and you look and you go and you give, people were literally giving from their smartphones, their iPads, their tablets. And the reality is we all have them. We use them for absolutely everything. So if you're a nonprofit thinking about how do I make the most of Giving Tuesday in 6 months, make sure somebody can give to you via their smartphone. So I'm going to stop there, turn to Victoria, and ask you to share your results on social media.
Sure, I'm happy to. And thanks for having me here today. This is a great panel and great company. You know, Giving Tuesday is one of my favorite days of the year, and I loved Henry talking about how it's a ritual, because I think that's very true. It's a great way to think about it. I know in my family it's becoming a ritual, and I really appreciate having that antidote to Friday and Monday and all of that, and kind of starting the holiday season. So it's fun to be talking about it here in June, and I know you're all already thinking about it. So, you know, Giving Tuesday is a tremendous movement for generosity, but it's also a real learning lab, and I hope we can talk about that a little bit today. I think it's a learning lab for individuals, for organizations, and for our sector. How can we move people to action? How can we use these new tools like mobile? How do we use social to its greatest effect? And we are learning more and more and more each year. So really, as Henry was talking about, the data is what helps us learn. It's great to have measures of accomplishment, but it's also what didn't work so well and where should we be focusing. So I'm going to share some of the things we learned last year. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has been a big supporter of Giving Tuesday since the beginning in 3 main ways. And really, maybe the most important way is that Bill and Melinda lend their own voices to Giving Tuesday. They're huge supporters, and they champion their causes and different organizations. We've had match campaigns at the foundation, and that use of influencers' voice is, I think, one of the more important things to think about with social media. We provide grant support to Giving Tuesday starting last year. And last year we also tried something different. We lent the talents and the expertise of one of our internal teams that usually analyzes HR data and grants data and all kinds of boring things, and said, what can you do with Giving Tuesday? They were thrilled to get to analyze. They were already asking me, what about next year? You know, can we do this again? So we did a little analysis of the conversation. So we haven't yet figured out how to tie this to the giving data, and I can't wait till we do that.
Yeah, and sometimes people get over-focused on, evaluating social based on the money that comes in. And there's a whole lot of value of social separate from that, too.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And just thinking about the conversation itself and the current conversation and what you can generate. So I thought I'd share some of the findings and then also kind of tie it to something you can do with it. So starting here, you know, basically 99% of the social media conversation happened on Twitter. That we found. And so it doesn't mean you shouldn't think about Facebook and LinkedIn, and those I'm sure will grow every year, but you've got to have a Twitter strategy. You've got to be thinking about who's on Twitter and what they're saying. So last year there were about over 1 million tweets leading up to Giving Tuesday in that first month that kind of reached about 32 million people. And let's see, these aren't quite the slides I thought they were, which is okay. But the thing I really want to tell you, which is not here, is that one of the most interesting findings we had was that the majority of the people talking about Giving Tuesday were women on Twitter. So like 63% of the conversation was driven by women, except when it came to bicycles. There was one organization that was all about bicycles, and then the men shot up to like 64%. So if you've got an organization that has anything to do with bicycles or maybe sports and fitness, it's something to keep in mind. So women were a huge part of the conversation. We found that the US was responsible for about 1/3 of the traffic, which is really fascinating. It was a great sign that Giving Tuesday is going global, and it's a great confirmation for that. And I think the thing to take away from all this is to know your audience. You know, who's talking about you now on social media? You want to meet your current audience. It's great to think about new people, and just as you said, to focus on kind of donations, but you know, you don't want to lose your supporters. So get your audience going right now and know who they are. Are they women? Are they men? What language are they speaking? Where are they based? Who are they? The other big thing I want to talk about is the impact of influencers. So when you think about Twitter and social media, we found great success that organizations had when they found particular influencers to retweet them and to share their information. It's great to have celebrities, and that always gets you, a lot of traffic. But you also want to think about credibility scores and really having credible influencers as well. Think about the kinds of people who are influencers about your topic. If you're a local organization, it may be somebody local. It may not be Katy Perry. It may be, your local bicycle champion. Yeah. Think about who means the most for your cause and who's already talking about you, who's already a huge supporter and is retweeting you constantly. Those are the people to reach out to start making the asks. You also want to think about influencers like your beneficiaries. Make-A-Wish Foundation was one of the most successful organizations last year. Nothing's more powerful than a kid or a family that's had their wish met. It's one thing to have a celebrity, but the real stories of the lives that are being changed are one of the most powerful things we can do. The last kind of tip I wanted to leave you with was about learning from others and kind of where we started with Henry today. We know which organizations were the most successful. Pencils for Promise was huge on Giving Tuesday, twice the conversation that anybody else was having. And it's interesting to note, they did not have a celebrity endorser. So again, kind of know your audience, know your strategy, think about it now and start the conversation now. So there's lots we can learn from others. UNICEF might not have the right lessons for you. I mean, again, if you're a local nonprofit, look at other local nonprofits in your area or that are like you in other cities. See what they did. See how they were successful last year and benefit from that. I think the last thing I want to leave you with is just a request, and that's to really share what you're learning back into the community. I mean, this is a community, this is a network, and it's your lessons and stories and your data that are going to really make the difference for people going forward.
Great, thank you.
So I'd love to pick up on one of the things that you've been talking about, Victoria, and a quick thanks to the Giving Tuesday team for having me here with such wonderful co-panelists. But I think that the trickiest thing for nonprofits when you're thinking about data is how to balance that macro and the micro, right? Because the macro data is going to be, okay, more and more people are giving online. So should we follow that trend and make sure that all of our giving is focused to mobile users? On the other side of things, but what does our audience look like, right? Does our audience give on mobile, right? So if you find out that, well, most of our audience isn't using mobile for giving, so that's our micro trend. But the macro trend is that more and more people want to give with mobile. Where do you balance that out? And I think so much of that has to do with the goals that you have for your campaign. And if you say, we want to focus mostly on retaining our current donors, getting them to give, getting them maybe to commit to a recurring donation or to increase the average size of the donation, but we're just focusing on our core group, then tailor your strategy to what you know that your core givers want to give to you. But if you're looking to grow your audience base, to have a campaign that reaches more people, if those are the major stats that you want to be hitting against, if those are your targets, then you absolutely have to be thinking of those macro trends. Yeah. And for almost every single organization, it's going to be a little bit of a balance of both, right? And you might want to keep the door open for both. You might want to say, well, it's about retaining our current donors and about growing more donors. And then you just need to make those difficult cost-benefit analysis of, okay, what do we have time for? What do we think is going to be the most valuable trends for us to follow for our audience and for a new audience? But the most important thing is to start by learning. Yeah. The more that you can see what is out there, what are other people doing that's successful, the more that you can actually learn from that and implement it.
One of my favorite stories of Giving Tuesday was the San Diego Zoo. So the social media manager at the San Diego Zoo had this incredible playbook, which she would share with anybody who wanted it. They created stickers, and they decided that wildlife conservation was going to be their thing for Giving Tuesday. That's what they're going to talk about. And they created a sticker with a rhino on it. They gave every single person who came into one of their parks that day a sticker. That's 5,000 people. They kind of, by proxy said, you're a part of Giving Tuesday. They put the sticker on the thank you letters to the recurring donors. They did all these things. They created on the giving part, they said, it's really not about, we have a really rich fundraising strategy. Anyway, this is not about us going and trying to raise millions of dollars, but they said, we have to have something out there. So they created like Giving Tuesday bundles where you could like feed a rhino, or for this amount of money you could, give to the chimpanzees or whatever it was. And it was just very fun. and engaging for people. And I think when we were talking beforehand, you mentioned something about how it's an opportunity to take some risks and do something different.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for a lot of organizations, especially still because it's new, it hasn't become the campaign necessarily. It's always kind of a surprise for many organizations, I think, when they exceed their expectations. And so it is a time to try something new. So I would really encourage folks to maybe try some A/B testing. You know, it doesn't sound super exciting, but it could be fascinating just by like changing a word or two, or a photo, or another photo versus no photo, or whatever it is, celebrity endorsement versus not celebrity endorsement, and send that out to your user base and really, really track it and see what happens and what comes back. You may be surprised by what you learn. There's some great organizations like Donors Choose and Kiba and Global Giving that do A/B testing all the time, and they share their results on their site and their blog, and they talk about how to do this. So I think, you know, it can sound like daunting to take on, but it's really not, and it's something people should be willing to kind of try.
And I know that this has been plugged before, but share your failures as well. If you learn something in your A/B testing that it's like, oh shoot, like our campaign actually, you know, wasn't as successful, or, you know, the strategy that we thought was going to work didn't. Well, guess what? Giving Tuesday is going to happen next year as well. So you can learn from that and try next year. But if you just learn by yourself, then all of those other organizations out there that are trying the same thing that don't know that that might not work, they're not going to be able to benefit from your experience. And so the more that we can collectively talk about those successes and failures, the faster that we're all going to succeed as a sector.
Yeah. Absolutely. So other good examples come to mind, like the zoo or other organizations, small or large, of things that people have done on Giving Tuesday that you wanted to point out?
You know, I think that the thing that stands out to me the most is how successful that small organizations can be in online fundraising. You know, we've seen that at the Case Foundation since our time doing America's Giving Challenge back in 2007 and 2009, which feels like forever ago now. But you know, those are kind of the same trends. And we thought, okay, well, great. Big organizations with huge money, you know, and dedicated staffs are going to be the one who can come in and say, yeah, sure, give, send out one email blast, and all of a sudden all of their supporters give. But that's not what we're seeing. You know, you see examples like Baltimore. Baltimore didn't have such an amazing, compelling campaign because they had millions of dollars and a lot of people who just spent all of their time for a year planning for Giving Tuesday. They were successful because they had passionate people who were connected to the issues, who they could actually make a really targeted campaign for. And so it's like the San Diego Zoo, where if you can say, this is how it affects what we're trying to do, this is how it involves you as a member of our community, and this is how you're going to benefit from it. It's those personalized, hyper-local campaigns that I think are the most fascinating, because you don't need a whole bunch of money and a dedicated staff. What you need is a really good strategy and a way to involve your community to help them to feel like they are contributing towards making the community a better place.
So I know the Case Foundation is really interested in trying to help figure out the overall impact of Giving Tuesday. Do you want to talk about that a little bit on the macro level? Because, you know, if we were sitting here a year from now, what would we know greater than what we know now?
That's a great question. So, you know, I think that it's interesting when you think about Giving Tuesday in the context of all of the other days that happen around there. You know, Cyber Monday and Black Friday, where, you know, the number one thing that people ask after Black Friday is, okay, well, how much did people spend? And people ask that about Giving Tuesday as well, right? How much was raised?
Yeah.
And you know, you opened with we had $26.1 million raised on Blackbaud last year. And so baseline, we think that's important to know. Like, we have to know how much is raised by this movement so we know if we're growing, so we know if we're being successful. But there is so much more than that. So kind of our first step is to bring together some of these data platforms, partnering with 92Y and the Giving Tuesday team to kind of see how is all of this coming together? What are we seeing across the platforms in terms of a big scale movement happening? But hopefully, I want it to get beyond that. Right? I want to see how is that affecting overall giving. You know, what nonprofits are being the most successful? What is the average demographic of givers? Is it women, just like we're seeing on Twitter, or are they the ones that are most socially active, but you know, the donor base is more diverse? These are the types of things we haven't been able to dig into yet. But I think, as Henry said, now that we are more in the ritual tradition phase of Giving Tuesday, I think that's when a lot of that data is going to come out. And then the one other thing that's been on my mind this week with the Giving USA report is, I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but the giving as a percentage of GDP has been stagnant for decades. 30, 40 years, it has been 2% of GDP. And I know that these are all really abstract numbers because GDP is so huge, but any movement off of that is a huge success. And the report said we had 2.1% of GDP giving, which is, it's such a tiny thing when you're only talking about 1/10%, but that's actually so significant. So for giving to move for the first time in decades, I want to know why. I want to know if Giving Tuesday had something to do with that,
So
which we don't know yet.
We're going to come back next year and talk about this again.
Great.
So I'm getting the signal that our time is up. I want to say thank you to our panelists and remind you that even though we're thinking about these big issues of how much overall has happened, you can really dial down and figure out and track what your organization is doing. And that is really, really incredibly important. So don't let this stuff daunt you. So thank you so much. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Elaine.